North Africa is not the most peaceful region in the world. But amidst the coups, civil wars, unrest, and general lack of stability, is a single country which has not only persevered, but thrived amongst it all. Welcome to Morocco, the lone African country that has maintained and prospered since its modern inception. But why is Morocco so peaceful while its neighbors continually fall into war? As usual, it all starts with the country's unique and surprisingly diverse geography. Morocco, a country perched at the northwestern edge of Africa, is striking in its geography. In fact, its unique position, bridging the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea and serving as the westernmost gateway to the vast Sahara Desert from Europe, has sculpted a landscape that has a surprising amount of variability from temperate coastlines to arid interior and from towering mountains to expansive plains. Basically, it's not all desert. At the heart of Morocco's physical geography lies its formidable mountain ranges. The Atlas Mountains, a majestic chain that runs diagonally across the country from northeast to southwest, acts as a natural spinal column for the country. And this mountain range is further divided into three distinct sections. The High Atlas, home to North Africa's highest peak, Jabal Tubkal, rises to over 4,000 meters and forms a significant barrier to its north. The Middle Atlas trends in a more northerly direction characterized by a mix of forests and plateaus. Finally, the Anti-Atlas extends southwestward towards the Atlantic, a more barren and arid range. These mountains are not mere geologic features. They influence everything from Morocco's climate and hydrology, trapping moisture from Atlantic storms on their western slopes, to where people have settled and established cities. Also, fun historic fact, the Atlas Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains of North America are technically the same mountain range. The two split somewhere around 100 million years ago. North of the Atlas Mountains along the Mediterranean coast lie the Rift Mountains. This crescent-shaped range, part of the same geological system as Spain's Sierra Nevada, rises from a narrow coastal plain, while generally lower than the High Atlas. The Rif also contributes to Morocco's microclimate, with its northern slopes receiving substantial rainfall. In fact, some of these parts of Morocco can get as much as 60 in of rain per year, along with abundant snowfall in the higher elevations, pushing back against Morocco's dry and sandy reputation. Between these mountain systems and extending towards the Atlantic Ocean are Morocco's vital coastal plains and plateaus. These regions, particularly the extensive Gard Plain in the northwest and the Moroccan Plateau to the south of Casablanca, are characterized by fertile soils, making them the agricultural heartland of the country. This in turn supports a significant portion of the population and much of its modern commercial agriculture here. The moderating influence of the Atlantic Ocean is keenly felt, resulting in mild temperatures and a generally more humid climate than the interior. Finally, moving all the way east and south from the Atlas Mountains, the landscape turns into the vast arid expanse of the Sahara Desert. This is the part of the country that most people associate with Morocco, and this is because the Atlas Mountains create a distinct rain shadow, meaning that the land immediately to their east receives significantly less rainfall, leading to the abrupt onset of desert conditions. This Saharan influence has a huge impact on the climate, and temperatures can become increasingly extreme with scorching hot days and brutally cold nights. While seemingly inhospitable, this desert landscape is punctuated by oases, verdant pockets of life sustained by underground water sources, which have historically been crucial for trade routes and local communities. Morocco's climate is more varied than you might think. Certainly more so than popular culture has made it out to be. And this has inevitably led to the way in which the country was settled, developed, colonized. Morocco is both an old and new country. It's a complex story for how the country even came into existence, especially when considering the complicated history Morocco has with its northern European neighbor, Spain. Their geographic proximity via the Strait of Gibraltar has ensured that their destinies have often been intertwined. In many ways, the history of Morocco is the history of Spain. The earliest threads of Morocco and its connection to Spain date back to the 8th century, when Muslim forces, primarily Berbers from North Africa, crossed the strait to conquer and establish Alu in the Iberian Peninsula. For nearly 800 years after, Islamic rule flourished in what was modern Spain, leaving its mark on modern Spanish art, architecture, language, and intellectual life. Cities like Cordoba, Sevilla, and Granada became centers of learning and culture, serving as a bridge for knowledge from the Islamic world to reach Europe. In this way, the Iberian Peninsula avoided the intellectual dark ages that much of Europe was still reeling from. And the country that would become Spain looked and felt much more like the Islamic Idrisided dynasty across the strait than the early origins of what would become France, the Carolingian Empire. However, the tide turned with the Christian Reconquista, which culminated in 1492 with the fall of Granada, the last Muslim stronghold in Spain. This marked a significant shift as the Christian kingdoms began to expand their influence southward, establishing footholds along the Moroccan coast. Spain's interest in Morocco intensified over the centuries, driven by strategic concerns over the Strait of Gibraltar and the desire to control the very valuable trade route from the Atlantic Ocean into the Mediterranean Sea. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, as European powers carved up Africa, Morocco became a focal point of imperial rivalries. Despite its long history as an independent sultanate, its internal weaknesses and external pressures led to its partitioning. In 1912, the Treaty of Fez established a French protectorate over the greater part of Morocco, while Spain was granted a protectorate over the northern strip of the country, primarily the Rif Mountains and a smaller southern zone near the Sahara. The city of Tangier was designated as an international zone due to its strategic importance. Under Spanish rule, the Northern Protectorate faced significant resistance, most notably the Rif War.
Led by Abd el-Krim, a charismatic Berber leader, the Rif tribes mounted a fierce insurgency against both the Spanish and later French forces, establishing the short-lived Rif Republic, though ultimately suppressed by a combined Franco-Spanish military effort. This conflict became a powerful symbol of Moroccan nationalism and a precursor to the wider independence movement. The Spanish Civil War also saw the Army of Africa, largely composed of Moroccan soldiers, play a crucial role in General Francisco Franco's rise to power, further entangling the two countries. After World War II, there came a renewed push for independence across Africa. Moroccan nationalists, particularly the Independence Party, gained momentum, advocating for the return of Sultan Mohammed V, who had been exiled by the French for his support of the independence movement. The popular outcry and growing unrest forced both France and Spain to reconsider their positions. As such, Morocco formally gained its independence from France on March 2, 1956. Following this, Spain negotiated its own withdrawal. On April 7, 1956, Spain relinquished control over most of its northern protectorate to the newly independent Kingdom of Morocco. The southern zone around Cape Juby was ceded later in 1958. However, a significant point of contention remained. Spain retained control over the ancient enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla on the Mediterranean coast, as well as a few smaller offshore islands. These cities, with their centuries-old Spanish presence, remain sovereign Spanish territories to this day, a persistent point of diplomatic tension and a lingering legacy of the colonial era that Morocco views as integral parts of its national territory. Since independence, the relationship between Morocco and Spain has been characterized by a delicate balance of cooperation and friction. The two are key trading partners and collaborate on issues such as counter-terrorism and migration control, given their shared border and geographic proximity as gateways between Europe and Africa. And it is precisely because of this unique relationship that Morocco has been so relatively stable over the decades, at least compared to its neighbors. Morocco stands out in a continent often beset by political turmoil and instability, having maintained a remarkable degree of peace and relative prosperity since its independence compared to many of its African neighbors. This stability is not an accident. Rather, it's due to a confluence of forward-thinking policies that has ensured that Morocco maintains stability, even while other countries nearby fall into ruthless dictatorships, bloody civil wars, and general unrest. One of the foundational pillars of Morocco's stability is its long-standing monarchical system. This might sound off because we typically associate peace and prosperity with liberal democracies, but it's true. Unlike many post-colonial African states that experimented with various forms of republican governance, often leading to coups and civil wars, Morocco retained its king, who was very popular when Morocco became independent once again. The Alawi dynasty, with roots stretching back centuries, provided the country with a deep sense of historic continuity and legitimacy. In this way, Morocco is similar to a country like Thailand or even the United Kingdom. Having a strong, stable figure head does wonders for ensuring long-lasting peace. The king, particularly King Mohammed VI, plays a central role as a unifying figure, a spiritual leader, and the ultimate arbiter of political power. And while Morocco is not a full democracy, the king has overseen a process of gradual, controlled political reforms, including constitutional amendments and parliamentary elections, which have allowed for some degree of political participation and even dissent, thereby absorbing pressures that might otherwise erupt into wider unrest. This contrasts sharply with countries like Libya and Sudan, which have experienced severe state collapse or prolonged civil conflicts following the removal or weakening of strong central authorities. Economically, Morocco has also pursued a path of diversification and liberalization, albeit with ongoing challenges. While not a major oil producer like Algeria or Nigeria, Morocco has invested heavily in infrastructure, renewable energy, and export-oriented industries such as automotive manufacturing, aeronautics, and phosphates. This has created a more resilient economy, less vulnerable to the volatile commodity price fluctuations that has destabilized many resource-dependent African countries. Furthermore, the country has actively sought foreign investment and developed strong economic ties with Europe, providing a degree of economic stability and opportunities for its growing population. For example, its robust tourism sector provides a significant source of revenue and employment, a far cry from the economic fragility seen in countries like Somalia or the Central African Republic. Morocco even opened Africa's first ever high-speed rail line connecting the cities of Tangier and Casablanca, a trip that takes just over 2 hours today. Finally, Morocco's diplomatic strategy has also been crucial. Instead of fighting against and antagonizing the West, it has cultivated strong relationships, particularly with the United States and France, and secured strategic partnerships and economic support. Simultaneously, it has pursued a proactive South-South cooperation policy across Africa. This involves substantial investments in sub-Saharan African countries, often in sectors like banking, telecommunications, and agriculture, alongside initiatives like debt forgiveness and training programs. This engagement fosters goodwill and influence, creating a network of allies and lessening the likelihood of regional destabilization spilling over into Morocco. This stands in stark contrast to Mali, Niger, and Chad, all of which have had military coups in recent years and turned away from Western countries like the United States and France. Of course, no discussion of Morocco's stability can ignore the unresolved issue of Western Sahara. This territory, a former Spanish colony, was annexed by Morocco in 1975, a move not recognized by the United Nations. The Polisario Front, a Sahrawi national movement supported by Algeria, seeks independence for the territory, leading to a long-standing conflict and a frozen dispute. Morocco considers Western Sahara an integral part of its territory and has proposed an autonomy plan under Moroccan sovereignty as a solution. While a UN-brokered ceasefire has largely held since 1991. The conflict continues to be a drain on Moroccan resources and a significant source of regional tension, particularly with Algeria, which has closed its border with Morocco. Despite the ongoing Western Sahara issue, which remains a potential flashpoint, Morocco has managed to contain its direct impact on internal stability. The government maintains firm control over the disputed territory and has invested heavily in its development, aiming to integrate it fully. The conflict, while a geopolitical burden, has not triggered widespread internal unrest. A civil war, or the toppling of the monarch and government, unlike the devastating conflict seen in countries like Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, or the persistent insurgencies in the Sahel region. As with most countries, Morocco has been so peaceful and successful because it's had a stable government and, more importantly, one that's not only liberalized its economy, but also introduced democratic reforms, while neighboring countries opt to crush the will of its people. This week, my adventures in Europe continue. But instead of a beautiful city, I am heading to the tiny town that can't decide whether it's part of the Netherlands or Belgium. It's truly one of the craziest borders in the entire world. And if you want to see what it looks like in person, then come join me over on my travel channel. I hope you enjoyed learning all about Morocco. If you did, check out this other video all about why Jordan has also managed to be so successful compared to its neighbors. Thanks for watching. See you next time.